Hi, this is BJ Lawson, congressional candidate in North Carolina's 4th District. I'd like to take a moment and thank all of our supporters who have gotten our campaign to this point. We have run an incredibly passionate and incredibly successful grassroots campaign in a district that was widely regarded as unwinnable and frankly not competitive. But as it turns out, more and more people in the 4th District have proven to be hungry for the truth. And it's not just me, it's not just the Constitution. The events and the circumstances of the past 6 months, and especially accelerating over the past couple of weeks, have really begun to let people know that we need to start asking tough questions. We need to start holding our elected representatives accountable. And when we have a 20-year incumbent who clearly by his very actions shows that he answers not to the American people, but to the corporate interests who fund his re-election campaigns, people are beginning to wake up and know that it's time to make a change. I thank everyone who's gotten our campaign to this point, and I also challenge everybody. I was beyond grateful to receive, as many of you did, an email from Dr. Paul on behalf of the Campaign for Liberty expressing his support for our campaign and letting everybody in his network know that this is a race that demands our attention. And on behalf of all of the people who have been working so hard, putting out the yard signs, putting together the constitutions, going to events, getting the word out, calling voters, going door to door, we all thank you. We thank you for what you've done, and we thank you for what you're going to do in the next 4 weeks. Make no mistake about it, these are historic times. I spent my morning today at the Carborough Farmers Market again, which is where I've been every Saturday morning for the past 4 weeks or so, and the atmosphere is changing. People are beginning to understand that it's not enough to simply hide behind partisan labels and listen to partisan rhetoric and go back into our corners as Democrats and Republicans and beat each other up every 2 or every 4 years. In fact, on that topic, I had an amazing week when I was I had the opportunity to go to Washington on Wednesday, and while I was there, I stumbled into a political salon or a book club or a discussion that was being hosted by authors of a new book, Laurie Chickering and Jim Turner, and the book is called Voice of the People: The Transpartisan Imperative in American Life. If you haven't seen this book yet, I'd highly recommend checking it out, because this book really expresses the essence of what I think is unfolding in our campaign here in the 4th District of North Carolina, as well as I'm sure in many districts throughout the country. The bottom line is that Laurie Chickering and Jim Turner are two people who would never expect to be friends. One of them is a self-confessed right-winger, the other one is a self-confessed left-winger, but they're willing to engage in discussions about the issues. And they found over the past decades that they in fact developed a deep friendship that transcended party lines. And when they got beyond the partisan rhetoric, they got to the point where they began to realize that they had a lot more in common about what they wanted for their country, what they wanted for their children, than partisan rhetoric would suggest. And this book is one of the first books that I've seen that really takes the term that I think applies to our campaign, transpartisan, and explains what that means and the importance of beginning to look at issues not as Republicans or Democrats, but and recognizing that there exists another axis on the political spectrum that's not left or right, but it's really freedom versus control. And the amount of control that we have been subjected to over the past, not just 8 years, but over the past, my lifetime, and over the past decades, the control that we have been under economically, politically, and in all the ways that the government has sought to limit the power of the individual and empower corporate interests who increasingly run Washington, it's now becoming obvious to more and more people that we can't keep going in the same direction. So I say that in the context of being at the farmers market this morning at a place which is frankly objectively hostile towards Republicans. And I will admit there are 10% of the people that I run into out there where I can get into a great conversation about the issues. We can be all the way ready to seal the deal and have them vote for me in November, and they ask me what party I'm from, and I tell them I'm a Republican, and 10% of the people, yeah, they'll run away with hands over their ears, unwilling to say another word or even listen to another word. But that's only 10%. And on the other side, there are 10% of people who are so radically Republican and so radically partisan on the right that they'll refuse to listen or engage in a rational discussion with a Democrat. But that leaves 80% of Americans who, to some degree, understand we're moving in the wrong direction and understand we need to engage in an honest discussion and we need to insist on principled representation that follows the rules. So what I can say is that after 4 weeks of going to Carrboro, I have never had more conversations, more people coming up and wanting to learn more about the campaign, having heard about it from a friend or through the radio, and now, or yard signs, and now people are beginning to ask these questions in the context of the uncertainty that everyone feels about the future. You don't have to look much further than the cover of this week's The Economist magazine. I'll let you see this here. World on the edge. And indeed, we are a world on the edge. We're a nation on the edge. And it is time to calmly look at where we're at and not just panic about being on the edge, but start talking about what put us on the edge and how we can build a foundation for sustainable economic growth driven by self-sufficient local communities and getting us to the point where once again our government serves the American individual instead of corporate interests. I thank you very much for your support. I thank you for participating in the Money Bomb on Tuesday, and I really appreciate the willingness of the Ron Paul movement to translate into the struggle for liberty right here in North Carolina. We won't let you down.